Welcome to the Savvy Sauce, where we have practical chats for intentional living. I'm your host, Laura Duggar, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our sponsor, Wind-Shaped Marriage. Their weekend marriage retreats will strengthen your marriage while you enjoy the gorgeous setting, delicious food, and quality time with your spouse. To find out more, visit them online at windshapedmarriage.org/savvy. My returning guest for today is Jessica Smartt. She has authored another brilliant book entitled Come On Home. You're not going to want to miss a minute of this episode because she answers every question with kindness and eternal wisdom. Yet she still manages to share plenty of fun ideas and applicable tips. Here's our chat. Welcome to the Savvy Sauce, Jessica.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited about our conversation.
Well, I've been looking so forward to this. And it's been a few years since you were a guest on the Savvy Sauce. So as you're looking back, can you just walk us through how your motherhood experience has changed from the early days to now currently?
Yeah, it has changed so much. And I actually was thinking about this just on my own. God is so good. And I don't know if everyone's experience is kind of like this. I look around and see very high functioning young mothers. So I'm thinking maybe not, but I just feel like those first couple years were such a blur and I struggled with a lot of mental illness and just, anxiety, and probably that led into depression too, and just feeling really overwhelmed. I do feel like a lot of it was sleep deprivation, which is a literal torture technique that armies use. So I think just getting more, caring for my body better has actually been a huge thing. But also just God is just so kind. And I think I mentioned in the book of just like, really early on having this moment where I thought like, I'm not any good to anybody. And I didn't fast forward to see any of this, right? Like I didn't know how it was going to end. I just knew I felt terrible and like I couldn't function and overcome with anxiety and everything was blurry and overwhelming. And so to then fast forward and see personally in my own life, like the rewards of my kids are doing well and I like being a mom a lot. And, professionally that I'm even writing about it is stunning. So it's a real, redemption story to me. And just proof that also, God uses those pits because it was out of that I was able to, actually gain traction even on my blog, sharing about how my personal experience and loss and weakness. God used that. So I'm really grateful.
That's incredible to get just a little picture of that journey. And can you update us with your kids' ages now as of today?
Yes. So I have a 16-year-old boy. Last week we were visiting college, and that is very weird. And then a 14-year-old boy, and a 11-year-old daughter.
Okay, wonderful. So regardless of what phase we're in as parents, do you have any recommendations for questions that we can begin to ask ourselves so that we can take inventory and get real about our capacity and our health and our gifts?
Right, yes. So in Come On Home, that's kind of how I kick it off, because I say, you can't have the family that if in order to have the family you want or the home you want, you have to be honest about what you actually have and what you're starting with. And so part of that is taking inventory of yourself and your life. And that's not something we often stop to do in the chaos and busyness. So I asked, what your capacity is, and really just trying to help moms think through, preaching to myself here, like all the things that are on our plate, and is there something on our plate that the Lord maybe is not calling us to, or that doesn't correlate and match to what our really core values are in life? And those are hard questions to ask, but they actually bring a lot of relief to just be honest with yourself about what's happening in your life. And coming before the Lord and saying, I'd literally say, like, make a list of all the things that you're doing and look at it and see if you should take any off. And the list is, stunningly long for a lot of us. Um, but yeah, so that's just capacity, just kind of thinking through where we are and what we actually have the bandwidth to do. And then I talk about health and actually asking, like, your husband, if you're married, how would you like me to care for myself better? What's one thing that you like when I do? And a lot of times I think we're really surprised when we hear the things they appreciate or what they'd like us to do. And they might just be giving us a really wonderful gift to go invest in an area in our life that we've been overlooking. So, and then gifts, that's a really fun one to, because I'm not you and you're not me and we're not the listeners, but God has uniquely equipped all of us to be the mom and the homemaker, in our particular callings. So saying, like, are you a good organizer? Are you, the fun mom, right? That I wish I was and I'm not. Are you, the adventurer mom? Are you the crafty mom? God has given, do you cook well and, enjoy that? And everybody has a gift that you're whether you're, a soft place to land for your kids and a good listener, or you're, more drill sergeant-y like those firstborns tend to be, and that is me, so that's why I can say that. But just thinking about, like, what skills and gifts did God give me to lead my family well? And so that was just kind of the ground tilling up work before you think through, like, how can we build the family that we really want, with the life that we actually have and the person we really are.
And I love that was one of the aspects of the book that I just appreciated. You sprinkle all these insightful questions throughout, and it is really great to reflect on those with the Lord or with the journal or in conversation. But you're encouraging us repeatedly to get a long-term vision of this parenting journey. And so it makes me think my husband works with Chick-fil-A, and oftentimes he's encouraged to be careful not to just get caught up working in the business, but to pull back and work on the business. And it's actually better for everybody. And I just think as parents, we need that same reminder to kind of lift up our eyes, get a different view, and get above these urgent, incessant needs of today and look at where we're going. And I think the Bible speaks a lot to that with being prudent. And you challenge us with that long-term view to actually take in an eternal view in parenting, which is inevitably going to impact how we steward our time and our decision making. So, can you speak to both of those?
Yeah, I mean, the perspective, I think I said, there's the Bible verse about you reap what you sow, and we think of it as like a cautionary warning. And it is, but it's also just a true statement of how life works, meaning what you invest in and what you spend your time in, what you care about, what the things you're actually doing is where you're going to see growth. And so if I am investing in my home, I'm going to see fruit in there. Now, of course, it's not a one-to-one, it's not a slot machine. So, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And God is so good to cover up even over the areas that we've done a bad job in. But in general, you can't expect to grow cucumbers if you've been planting tomatoes. Like, what you've been planting in the ground is what's going to grow up. And so that's just like, even though it's kind of like fancy wordy language, it's always just a good reminder to me to think, like, what am I actually spending my time doing? I want a family that, like, I was a recipient of, that's warm and inviting and you want to be around. Um, and in order to get that, like, you have to plant it. And so that's a lot of being present as a mom, and which is so hard, very hard. But I just wanted to not lay a burden on moms, but really just encourage them, like, do those things that are going to reap the life you actually want in the long term. And of course, you mentioned the word eternity. That's planning, building disciples. And so that is a very long road. You're not going to always see the fruit of that, immediately, but keeping our eye on, I want to raise kids that are living out the calling that God has placed on their lives and are going out into this world to be truth and light. Like, oh my goodness, so many hard, boring conversations that you have, but you have to. Like that's part of the equation.
I think that even that piece is with discipline too, which is one of my least favorite parts of parenting. I don't know if others relate to that, but a verse that I find so encouraging is Hebrews 12:11, that no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. And so I love that encouragement you're giving to a parent for the long view. And you bring up your family of origin. You write so much about this gratitude you have for your parents. And something you wrote really stuck with me, where you say, someone was always home, both physically and metaphorically. Someone was paying attention. So, Jessica, what caution do you want to share with any parents today who may be tempted to let go a little too early, a little too soon, and too young, whether that's with technology or even just being physically present?
I think it's just so important for moms and dads to receive their instructions not from the world, but from the Lord, because the culture right now is okaying and even encouraging parenting that is not godly parenting. We have so many distractions and we are pulled towards our phones, towards our own personal growth and flourishing, which is okay. Of course, we want to be healthy, as we just mentioned, but at the expense of the kids that God has put in our lives. That is the messaging you're going to receive from the world. If you're hanging out with people who do not have a biblical worldview, that is going to be how they're spending their time. And it's not a judgment statement. It is a observation that is not, the focus is not, I'm going to sit and, maybe at one point culturally, years and years ago, it really was more family oriented, but it is not anymore. It just simply is not. And, it masquerades under that as, oh, we're all going to the soccer game together and we're going to go watch the gymnastics performance or whatever it is. But that is not always true discipling of your children. That's kind of being present in a cursory way and not truly and really. To really pay attention and really be present with your kids is going to look vastly different than what the rest of the world is doing. And if it doesn't, you got to check. And I'm saying this as absolutely of myself. There are moms that are just on their phone, and I can do that as well. I've had to put in, we can talk about specifics, but I've had to put in like specific things in my actual phone, and in my life parameters and guidelines so that I'm not doing that. But no one in the world is going to tell you not to. That's normal to just be stuck on your phone, as a mom, as a kid, whatever. And so, like, where are you getting your voice that's saying how to parent? Who are the voices that are speaking into your life? Are you listening to older and wiser mentors? Are you reading really good books? Are you putting yourself in the word first thing in the morning? Or are you just floating around with whatever culture says to do? And I don't mean to sound judgy here because I am deeply convicted, even as I'm speaking this, of like, am I living this? I'm not always. It's very, very hard. But I just think first step is, to orient yourself to the Lord and how would He have you parent, not what is everyone else okay with doing, because it's going to look very different.
Okay, I love that with kind of the emphasis on it does require a sacrifice from us with that quality and quantity time. And it makes me think on page 38 of your book, you encourage us to take the time to know each child, helping them find their passion, abilities, gifts, and interests. And that really does bless both the child and the parent.
And now a brief message from our sponsor.
Friends, I'm excited to share with you today's sponsor, WinShape Marriage. Do you feel like you need a weekend away with your spouse and a chance to grow in your relationship together at the same time? Wind-Shaped Marriage is a fantastic ministry that provides weekend marriage retreats to help couples grow closer together in every season and stage of life. From premarital to parenting to the empty nest phase, there is an opportunity for you. Wind-Shaped Marriage is grounded on the belief that the strongest marriages are the ones that are nurtured, even when it seems things are going smoothly, so that they're stronger if they do hit a bump along their marital journey. These weekend retreats are hosted within the beautiful refuge of Wind-Shaped Retreat, perched in the mountains of Rome, Georgia, which is a short drive from Atlanta, Birmingham, and Chattanooga. While you're there, you will be well-fed, well-nurtured, and well-cared for. During your time away in this beautiful place, you and your spouse will learn from expert speakers and explore topics related to intimacy, overcoming challenges, improving communication, and more. I've stayed on site at Wind-Shaped before, and I can attest to their generosity, food, and content. You will be so grateful you went. To find an experience that's right for you and your spouse, head to their website, windshapedmarriage.org/savvy. That's WINSHAPE marriage.org/savvy, SAVVY. Thanks for your sponsorship. So, Jessica, what has this looked like in your home? And can you give us some ideas?
Yeah, I just think it is so easy for us to have our own expectations of what our kids are and even to speak that over them from the minute they come out of the womb, whether it's, oh, we've just pinned them as to be this, or it's something that we are, or something that we want them to be. But instead to look and see, like, who is this actual child that's been created? And I thought of, years and years ago, my son was like itching to do something. They get to be like 9, 10, and they start feeling like, they need something other than mom in the house. And we were kind of praying about it and thinking it through. And he said, I think I really would like to play soccer. And at the time we were pretty committed into the baseball world. And I was like, no, I had friendships with the parents and we liked the coach and we were already there. And soccer was this whole thing I didn't even know. I was like, no. And honestly, I waited for a year or two, but now both my boys are in a semi travel league. It's not like all out driving all across the country, but they've been able to play at a higher level and they're doing amazing. It's clearly what they were meant to do. And I could have missed out on that just by being like, no, that's not what you do. Like, so just being open as a parent to really like, what are they good at? And it may not be what you thought. It may not be what you are good at. My daughter loves to make a giant mess in the kitchen, giant, and cook. And oh my goodness, it is very hard for me because I'm like a keep it clean, don't use all the ingredients. But I've been convicted to really, let her explore these gifts. I have a friend whose daughter is making these elaborate birthday, like the most crazy Food Network kind of thing. And I saw it and thought, I know what that kitchen must have looked like when you let her do that. That was a lot of days and afternoons of you letting her waste the flour and make a big mess. But the fruit it's incredible. And so yeah, sacrificing what we want to let them grow into, and God is so good. Like if we don't know what it is, pray with your kid. Like what is your thing? What do you think God's made you to do? You need an activity. Let's ask God, like what he wants you to do. I've never prayed a prayer like that hasn't been answered, and never.
Oh, that's so good. I mean, we think of for friendship for ourselves or with our children or activities that they want to do. Just hopefully that's what we keep being reminded of is bring it to the Lord rather than seeking out those voices in culture and see what his perfect plan is. But you also write an entire chapter on the power of time. So will you share some of your applicable wisdom here?
Yes, and don't mind me while I actually get out the book because even though you wrote it, sometimes you're like, what exactly did I say? But thinking through like activities that our family has signed up for, as I mentioned, I was kind of like connected in that baseball mindset. And so, was it actually the right thing for my kids? Maybe or maybe not. And so I talked through like questions to ask, as a husband and wife about where our family is going and what activities our kids are doing, which is a giant question today. I don't think parents are thoughtful enough about what they're signing up for and what they're doing. And you get, mid-November and your schedule is completely packed and your kids having meltdowns and you're never eating dinner together and you're like, how did we get to this life? But it was a little bit of like not quite following the path ahead mentally to see what it would look like. And I would just encourage anybody right now that it's not too late to rearrange, even if you have to quit something, even if it costs a deposit, even if you have to back out. Like we are not as trapped as we think we are. And if you're doing something in your family that's not healthy or, it's not benefiting you, stop. Like no one's gonna, Anyway, so as you're thinking through activities, I talked about the interest question, which means like, is your kid actually there or is it like you that's kind of getting more out of this? And then I talked about the mealtime question, and maybe we'll get to this, but family meals are so important. They really are. Even if it is, not hours of sitting there with candlelight, whatever, just to have that checkpoint together. So is your activity schedule allowing you to uphold whatever your values are with meals? I'm not going to tell you what they are, but is that what you want, really? And then the whole family question, I've seen a lot and we've lived it too of like the younger kid getting drugged around to the older talented kids' activities. That's really a hard one, right? And so I'm not saying don't do that. Sometimes families are going to just look like that for seasons. But I do think it's worth stopping to say, what is it like right now to be that youngest child? What are they going through? And am I being kind to them? Are there switches we can kind of make in the family? Because it's, the family is not about one person and their talents. It's a holistic, healthy, functioning unit.
Absolutely. So even I hear you saying evaluating, again, kind of taking inventory, what is on the family plate? How is that affecting every human in the unit of the family? Is that taking us where we want to go? Just being, I love how you use the word thoughtful, just being full of thoughts of this and taking it to the Lord of what's the wise thing to do. And for all of us, I think with that time question, it does lead us to the question of who are we spending the most time with? Because that will significantly impact our lives. It'll impact our children as well. So do you have any other, I love those questions. Any other lessons that you've learned? I'm thinking especially related to activities and youth sports come to mind because our culture really has gone to the side of idolizing it and catering everything else around that. So do you have any other wisdom to share on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share personally. We have decided to have our kids play at a level that is probably sub what their talent could be. And I don't know. I guess time will tell if they look back and they were like, Mom, I really, could have. But I have a hunch that they won't. I more often am seeing in my friends and stuff that's like they get into high school and the kids are kind of starting to feel burnt out, or they're like, it's so hard right now to be, I mean, not even a professional, let's say soccer player, but at college, it's like unheard of. It's the elite, elite. And so it's like, why are you doing this anyway? And we've had several opportunities to compete at higher levels and try out for things that we have said no to, because it would require being gone more nights. It would require tons of time in the car. It would be families away on the weekends. So we have some of that. I think it's important when you have boys, especially, to let them have an outlet to compete. If I homeschool as you do, and so if you have a homeschooled teenage boy, they should probably be doing something, right? So I am not saying sit at home and play Monopoly every night as a family, but we have chosen to prioritize other things. And so far, I am super grateful for that. We had a season where we were way too busy with baseball. And the boys were like 10 and 12. And Monday through Thursday, one of them had we were never eating together Monday through Thursday. Saturdays we were taking off different directions. I could never understand why we had to drive 2 hours to play a team. I'm like, there's so many baseball players right in this neighborhood. Can we not find a team? Um, and God used that. It's fine, but I don't envy that season. I'm really grateful for some of the breathing room that we've had. And also, I would say my son, my oldest son, is a gifted guitar player and singer, and he would not be able to do that. If we were 110% in one of those other sports, he would not have any time to even pursue those other interests. You just never know. I think white space and mental white space and time, I talk about this in Let Them Be Kids, is so important for just developing as a person. No one flourishes well with a completely jam-packed schedule. And so how would we expect our children to, you know?
That is good. That is so wise. And how can we strategically connect with our kids so that they do feel seen and known and loved and liked?
Yes. I mean that that feels overwhelming, doesn't it? And I talk through in the book kind of each one of those categories. Um, but I know this is going to sh sound cliche, but I would just say like recognizing that if a kid doesn't feel like you like them, they're going to notice that. And so it doesn't matter all the extra things, what you're getting them for Christmas and where they're taking them. If they really genuinely feel like you're kind of annoyed with them, they know that. And that's not great. So I would say first step before you get into any practicals of pancake breakfast and all that is just like if you are feeling that way to your kid, A, don't feel guilty. It's natural. We all have that at times. And B, come before God and just say, these are the feelings I'm dealing with. Can you please help me here? And again, to quote myself, I've never prayed that prayer and it not been answered. God has always shown up in some way. And so often, what it looks like, I talk about in being liked, is just like genuinely working on something that you have in common. I think my parents did that so well with us, and it wasn't the same thing because my siblings and I are all different, but they really worked to always find common ground and always have that relationship bucket full, right? My mom is like big on, don't make too many withdrawals unless you have made a lot of deposits. And they lived that for years and years and years of pouring into us and genuinely connecting with us. So way harder to do than to say, but that's our goal. And I do actually have a lot of specific ideas in the book of random ways you can love your kids, love languages and all of that. Um, but yeah, asking God for help.
And sometimes it's just helpful to hear what somebody else does, even if that's not exactly how it'll apply to our situation. But can you just give one example of a way that you've used your child's love language, maybe both for one of your sons and your daughter?
hmm well, I've learned a lot about my middle child, and he loves the comfort things in life. So, if I see him struggling with school or something, I can bring him, make him a little like yogurt parfait, or he likes coffee. So we give our kids coffee. Don't sue us, anybody. But if I make him a cup of coffee, oh, you can just see it in his face. It's like, oh, mom loves me. He's one that even like if I go make his bed, he'll appreciate that. Not every kid is like that, but just kind of seeing and noticing the things that he likes, that's been kind of something that we do. And then my daughter loves to tell stories, long, long stories. And I'm working so hard to not only like I want to listen, but also, teach her how to condense. Um, because Jordan Peterson says, don't let your kid become someone that is, not pleasant to be around. If you're struggling with something, someone else will too. And she's an absolute delight. I mean, truly. But so just listening to her stories and kind of working on the art of conversation. My mom always said, play tennis, conversation tennis. So you hit the ball and then I hit the ball back to you. So we're working on that.
Absolutely. That reciprocity is huge if you take turns asking questions. It reminds me, a previous guest, Jody Burnt, had also said, in addition to that, let's also teach our children how to serve the ball. So to initiate that
Mm,
conversation. I just thought that was
that's
so
so good.
cool.
I'll work that in.
Jessica, how can we purposefully make our home a place our family loves to be, and we do too?
I have been learning so much about this in this stage of life, in my 40s. And again, it's hard when you have little kids. So I think you can probably say across the board, it's going to look different when you're raising little kids to have a warm and wonderful, inviting home than it is in your later years when your kids are older and you have more time. But I would just challenge moms. Um, well, I look back and I think if I hadn't been so stretched thin and put unrealistic expectations on myself in other areas of life, I maybe could have invested in my home a little bit more. And the thing I have learned is that having a home that's peacefully run just reaps so many benefits for a woman and her family. And I am like behind the curve, I feel like on this. But as I have learned to like organize my space and really like pour myself into my home, not feeling like it's a waste of time to organize a pantry. Like it is amazing how it blesses my family. People notice it and it's hard to even articulate it because you wouldn't even think that if you clean out a closet, it's going to bless your family. But it really actually does. And my husband benefits from it. He's not even like a strict everything has to be clean. But when I've worked on something in the home, he sees it and notices it and appreciates it. So God has just been teaching me so much about what it looks like to really be like a homemaker, a godly homemaker, and pour myself into my home. And I have reaped so much joy and peace uh, from living out that role and calling in my life.
That was one of the quotes I wrote down, that observation that you made on page 142, and I'll just quote you. When I do something to invest in our home, every single member of our family brightens. And I just,
Exactly.
great. And you gave practical ways of how we can do that. And I also like it because it gives a little freedom because we're one of the family members too. And I think we brighten when we get that space in order.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Again, back to our earlier like cultural narrative versus biblical. There's a lot of messaging about that it doesn't matter really invest in your home and your family. And that's just not how God made the world to operate. So I would challenge moms that even if they are doing what the rest of everyone is doing and it's like, it looks like a bomb went off in here, that may not be how God is calling us to live, with a giant disclaimer that there are seasons of life that it truly does look like a bomb went off, and that is okay. We are doing good gospel work, raising children.
Absolutely. But then also, I think Proverbs 31 sometimes gets a bad rap, but really there's a lot of freedom in it for women because it is how the Lord created us. But she does look well to the ways of her household. And I think that just summed up. She's one of the members of the household, but so is everybody else. And that's one thing that can bless everyone. But you are just full and abundant with ideas, and you have an appendix in the book full of resources to help us maintain and take care of all our responsibilities. So, will you share a few of those ideas with us?
Yes, and maybe this is my homeschool mom speaking, but I have just learned so much from other good books. It's truly changed my life just in whether it's talking about personal health or discipline or marriage or prayer or my home. So the thing I'm really actually most proud about in the appendix is my list of recommended resources. And it's just all the books that have impacted me as a mom and also impacted my writing too. Um, I'll mention one. I think I don't know if everyone has read A Praying Life, but that has completely transformed not only my walk with the Lord, but my prayer life. And I've implemented, it's Paul Miller, I believe, his idea for prayer cards, and I do that every morning. It has been the sweetest thing, and I've really reaped a lot of blessing out of kind of modeling what he sets up in that book. So that's just one example. If you haven't read A Praying Life, you should definitely go read it.
That's awesome. And I don't know if this ties in, but I'm just remembering back one of the podcasts that I heard you speak on. You share your definition of godly self-care, and you say that it's whatever helps you do your job well and not at the sacrifice of others. So, can you elaborate with some encouragement for how we can make sure that we don't go to either side, that we don't neglect ourselves, but we also continue with this merrymaking for our family?
Right. Yes. And that definition, I always want to be like, the end part about not to the sacrifice of someone else. When I had I think I had two kids and my baby was 6 weeks old. I had a very qualified, loving teenage girl watch my two kids while my husband and I left for literally an hour to go to Five Guys and get burgers. And my youngest was not thrilled. He did not prefer the bottle. So, in some ways, his life was unsettled for a brief moment, but that was okay. So, I think everyone knows when I say, not to the sacrifice of everyone else. What I'm saying is like looking at the family, and certainly we shouldn't be like living this plush and well-watered life and someone else is withering away. So it's a general statement of, that it would be too far, as you said, on the extreme of, and I do think that happens, honestly, because we're all self-centered. It's not that we don't love our kids, we're just trained to care about ourselves. But many women struggle on the other side of maybe neglecting some areas in their life that could truly help them to be better wives and better moms. And it's a really fun activity to think like, how could I change my life a little bit in a way that I would be a better wife and mom? And I'm not meaning that to justify any sort of behavior that, you want to do, because you certainly could use that for almost anything. But really to think like, how can I be the best mom and wife that I could possibly be? And it might mean giving yourself some breathing room. And I would also encourage women to, one of the best uses for that time is to work on your marriage because there's direct overflow into the family. And so, best case, I gave some ideas of like family adventures that can kind of fill your cup along with everyone else. And I would say maybe next best or equal would be husband, wife stuff where you can check out, connect, and you're overflowing and ready to enter back into family life. And then finally, things that it's certainly fine to just step out and find those things that are life-giving to you, but just trying to keep an eye on, how is everyone in the family doing? And there might be seasons, I think of my mom caring for her mom who had dementia. She wasn't really well watered in that season. She was quite depleted, but that's what the Lord had been calling her to do at that period of time. And we often were like, Mom, you've got to like, we thought she did too much, but looking back, I think she really is so grateful that she laid down her life. There's not regret. And so I'm like, well, maybe she was right all along. I don't know.
Good though, the both and to have seasons of that where we can refresh so that when we go into a season where it's a little bit
Yes.
drier, we can be serving hopefully still from the overflow. But you also just blew me away in the book with your knowledge on roots. And the subtitle of that chapter is Recipes, Relics, Relatives, and Other Things That Keep Kids Grounded. So, will you just teach us a little bit more about roots and share how it applies to building a strong family?
Yes, I would like to shout out to my husband who is in the landscaping business. So he helped me. I was like, hey, can you please give me some fun facts about roots? And he was thrilled. But one thing I mentioned is that most plant problems are caused by root issues. And gosh, have I seen that in real life? Like even as an adult, you notice somebody that is carrying still issues that they're working through from their childhood. And so, what a gift we're giving our kids by giving them those strong, good roots and a healthy, childhood to enter into adulthood, not crippled by things, but that they can give out of strength. And my husband and I feel like, although our families of origin were not perfect, we lived that story. We were able to go out in strength and not, carrying all this emotional baggage. That's what I would like to give my kids. So, but then, yeah, at the end, I share that the most integral roots to the plant's well-being are the ones right near the surface. And I thought, what a kind of cool parallel that even if we, I've shared about my experience, but someone listening may not have good roots and they really might struggle with having support and partnership, but they can give a new story to their kids. They can give them the roots that they did not have through the Lord's strength. And I have friends that I'm literally seeing them do it, that they are crippled and, in therapy and dealing with all this trauma, but they're passing a different story on to their kids. And how cool is that? I have so much admiration for that. It seems like it's something that really only can be done through the Lord's strength, but he does it. He writes those stories.
And he seems to delight in redemption stories. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'd love to continue kind of this idea time. Will you just share another handful of your favorite practical tips for building a strong family that are topics we haven't covered yet?
Well, I would start with one thing I have seen huge rewards is if we do sort of like a Secret Santa idea, and we actually do it also before Valentine's Day and do, your Cupid's arrow, whatever, because it just changes your whole mindset when you're suddenly thinking, how can I, love this person in my family? You're in a better mood. And so we divide up names and then we also do like acts of service. And that is just such a fun, like low key way to kind of get your kids to think about loving their siblings instead of being annoyed by them. Um, we have loved doing game nights, and we're not like big game people, but finding ones that I think my encouragement would be that it doesn't have to be like this long 3 hour thing. If your family's not into that, we've done like minute to win it games that I just pulled up online. We have a lot of games that are like no mental stress. They're very easy, like Slapsy. If anybody has not played Slapsy, they need to pick it up. You could play it if you were extremely tired, which I often am at the end of the day. So to find some like there's also What Do You Meme Family Edition, and that is a fun one. And I have some other games listed in the book too for readers who are interested. So those would be two. We also do like one-on-one activities with the kids, and I always thought you had to do it like really, really regularly, but I would just give the encouragement that some is better than none. And so even if it's only a couple times a year, kids just soak that up. And it doesn't need to be, this whole long thing. It could be like, hey, you need some new winter pants. Let's get a Chick-fil-A milkshake beforehand, just to kind of keep your eyes open for those activities and opportunities.
Guess what? We are no longer an audio-only podcast. We now have video included as well. If you want to view the conversation each week, make sure you watch our videos. We're on YouTube, and you can access videos or find answers to any of your other questions about the podcast when you visit thesavvysauce.com.
Can you also share this genius idea about something that you put on the Notes app of your phone?
Yeah, so I talk about the power of stories. Kids love hearing stories from our, youth or young adulthood or even, married years, whatever. I got in the habit of sharing a story with my daughter before bed. And of course, at night, you aren't always on your A game. So I just have a note app on my phone to track different things that I might want to tell her. And my encouragement was that it doesn't need to be, we think it needs to be like this long, significant story, but even just little tidbits of things she has been delighted to hear over and over. Just like a passing, anecdote that didn't seem to me to be too pregnant with meaning, but she just ate it up and loved hearing about all of the different things. So, that was just, again, it didn't cost a lot. It's not hard, but just a little thing that kind of connected us. And also connected her to a deeper sense of like, here's your roots of the people that raised you.
I loved that idea because my daughters or our daughters will just catch us off guard and say, "Hey, share a story about us. Share a story about when you were little or when I was little." And so I love your system that you have in place that when that idea comes to me, I can jot it down. And then when they ask unexpectedly, I'm prepared. So thought that was wonderful. And you've written an entire book on memories. So I'll link to our previous episode where we talk about that and we dove into that topic. But you've updated your ideas in this book and come up with the most epic list of memory making ideas ever. So could you just share a couple of those to give us a taste of what you include?
Yes. So I think my favorite was at the in the chapter talking about surprises because I love the idea of surprising your kid. And when I talked about when I was little, my grandparents showed up at our school in their RV to take us camping. So just thinking through like just different, a lot of those are like the big, birthday or vacation or Christmas gifts. But even if you did it just one time, that can be like a core memory in, your kid's life. When I was researching this for the appendix, I reached out to a lot of my readers and they had the most fun ideas of just creative family memory making things. And one that I remembered that I thought, I don't know if I have the guts to do this, but I think that this family came up with it during COVID. So they were a little bit bored and they packed a picnic and went to a stop sign. And when they got to one, they would roll a dice to see which direction they would turn until they ended up at a good picnic spot.
Oh,
She said it was harder than you would think.
that's hilarious. I love the creativity and that element of surprise. That is so good. Well, I hope that everybody goes out to get a copy of your amazing book. But where else would you want to direct us to connect online after this chat?
Yeah, definitely come say hi on Instagram. I'm Jessica.smart with two T's, and you can tell me what you enjoyed about our conversation. And I'm usually every so often we'll check the messages, but I do get back to you.
Love it. We'll add links to that in the show notes for today's episode. And Jessica, you're already familiar that we're called the Savvy Sauce because savvy is synonymous with practical. And so my final question for you today, what is your savvy sauce?
So, what has changed my life, I really think, is, and this isn't like the most exciting thing, but walking every single day. And I walk with my weighted vest, so I look like every other 40-year-old woman that is out there. We have a little trail around our farm, so I honestly have like seen so much change in my mental health and physical health, and I know they say that on all of these, resources and stuff, and I never thought it was true, but it really has changed my life just to walk every day.
Amen, sister. I totally agree with that. That is so well said. You are just a brilliant and faithful and godly and humble woman. You're gifted with your communication, with your words in this conversation and in the books that you've shared with the world. And I am just so grateful for you, Jessica. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Well, thank you for those kind words.
One more thing before you go. Have you heard the term gospel before? It simply means good news, and I want to share the best news with you. But it starts with the bad news. Every single one of us were born sinners, but Christ desires to rescue us from our sin, which is something we cannot do for ourselves. This means there is absolutely no chance we can make it to heaven on our own. So for you and for me, it means we deserve death and we can never pay back the sacrifice we owe to be saved. We need a Savior. But God loved us so much, He made a way for His only Son to willingly die in our place as the perfect substitute. This gives us hope of life forever in right relationship with Him. That is good news. Jesus lived the perfect life we could never live and died in our place for our sin. This was God's plan to make a way to reconcile with us so that God can look at us and see Jesus. We can be covered and justified through the work Jesus finished if we choose to receive what he has done for us. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So would you pray with me now? Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus to take our place. I pray someone today, right now, is touched and chooses to turn their life over to you. Will you clearly guide them and help them take their next step in faith to declare you as Lord of their life? We trust you to work and change lives now for eternity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, you are declaring him for me, so me for him. You get the opportunity to live your life for him. And at this podcast, we're called the Savvy Sauce for a reason. We want to give you practical tools to implement the knowledge you have learned. So you ready to get started? First, tell someone. Say it out loud. Get a Bible. The first day I made this decision, my parents took me to Barnes & Noble and let me choose my own Bible. I selected the Quest NIV Bible and I love it. You can start by reading the book of John. Also, get connected locally, which just means tell someone who's a part of a church in your community that you made a decision to follow Christ. I'm assuming they will be thrilled to talk with you about further steps, such as going to church and getting connected to other believers to encourage you. We want to celebrate with you too, so feel free to leave a comment for us here if you did make a decision to follow Christ. We also have show notes included where you can read scripture that describes this process. And finally, be encouraged. Luke 15:10 says, "In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." The heavens are praising with you for your decision today. And if you've already received this good news, I pray you have someone to share it with. You are loved, and I look forward to meeting you here next time.